Well, as tensions continue to rise there, fighting has also been continuing along the Israel-Lebanon border. Hostilities there resumed after the Gaza ceasefire ended on Friday morning. Let's speak to our correspondent, Zeina Khodr. She's in southern Lebanon for us. Zeina, can you talk us through these latest attacks? You were reporting on exchanges across that border yesterday, too.
Throughout Saturday, heavy exchange of fire along the Lebanon-Israel border. The Lebanese armed group Hezbollah joined the battle on behalf of Hamas in the sense that its stated goal is to help relieve the pressure on Gaza. It believes that it is bogging down a number of divisions of the Israeli army on the northern front. So Hezbollah launching a series of attacks on Israeli military positions along the border. Israel launching a series of airstrikes, artillery strikes, targeting the outskirts of border villages, really along that 120-kilometer stretch of territory. The Israeli army also using white phosphorus artillery shells. They use this as a military tactic to burn bushes, to burn forests, where Hezbollah is able to launch attacks from. So it is really an ongoing confrontation. The first few weeks, it was sporadic exchange of fire. A few weeks later, it became more intense. Now, Hezbollah's engagement is very much limited. The question is, when will that change? Israel's, too, its response also confined to areas along the border. Now, Hezbollah has said that things could change depending on what happens in Gaza, what happens in Lebanon. Will Hezbollah join the fight with its full-blown military capabilities if it feels that its ally Hamas can no longer sustain attacks? Now, so this is still, a very much active war zone. You see Israeli planes overhead flying medium to high altitude, Israeli drones constantly in the sky, tens of thousands of people forced to leave their homes. Even during the Gaza ceasefire, when it was quiet along the border, people did not have enough time to harvest their crops. So this is taking a toll, really, on the tens of thousands of people who live along the border. So we are expecting these skirmishes, these heavy exchanges of fire to continue as long as the attacks on Gaza continue. This is at least what the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah says.
Zeina Khodr there with that report for us from the ground in southern Lebanon. Thank you, Zeina. Well, joining me now on set is Sami Hermez. He's an associate professor of anthropology at Northwestern University here in Qatar. Sami's written extensively about the Arab world, and he's also the author of the forthcoming book, My Brother, My Land, A Story from Palestine. Sami, you've also written a book on violence in Lebanon, so let me start there. We were hearing there from Zeina about how Hezbollah's engagement has been limited so far. How is Hezbollah making their calculations here?
I mean, I think the calculations, we're walking on a very sort of thin line, and this could explode at any moment. But look, I think the problem here is that if we had a self-respecting international community or self-respecting Arab countries on the border like Jordan or Egypt, or you wouldn't need Hezbollah to be taking on this essentially right to protect, right? I mean, Gaza's under attack and nobody is trying to protect. So you have this armed group that's doing it. So you could resolve this by actually having a sort of more international response to prevent these escalations.
What do you make then of what regional powers and Arab states have been doing so far in terms of their engagement? We saw a meeting between a number of Arab leaders and Kamala Harris, the US Vice President, yesterday, after which she seemed to change her tone. Is there some behind-the-scenes diplomacy here that's making any kind of impact?
The thing is, it's talk and talk and talk, but then they need to actually act. And I think, it's really important that they send a signal to the world that we're ready to act, that there needs to be international intervention. I think that, calling for ceasefire, on one hand, yes, the way that Macron is talking, the way that Kamala Harris is talking is obviously a movement from the beginning of this war. But, it's not enough. And if there isn't a sort of push, I think, if Riyad Mansour speaks so well at the UN General Assembly, but if he were to call on the world to actually intervene and, actually put some teeth to what you're talking about.
Let me ask you what you mean there by international intervention. You're talking about boots on the ground. Obviously, Arab states have been very clear they don't want to have Arab boots on the ground. And they've also said that they have red lines, that we've heard a lot about not redrawing the map of Gaza from Kamala Harris in the last day, which appears to now be a new red line for the US. But when you say international intervention, you're suggesting that we would,
yes.
There
I mean,
should be
you know,
international
if
boots on the ground?
they did this in, I said this earlier this morning, if they did this in Libya after one speech by Gaddafi, you know, obviously this isn't going to happen. What I'm saying isn't going to happen, but we need to put it on the table. Let Israel understand that its actions have repercussions, and it's not just talk. And then it's not just Macron coming and they sit and they shake hands and they talk about the two-state solution. Nobody has any idea how this two-state solution would actually pan out. Israel has destroyed it. It's become a one-state apartheid. So, you know, we can talk about two-state solution, but in effect, they want to take us back to the slow genocide that's been happening in the West Bank.
Well, it feels like we're a long, long way away from any kind of intervention that you're describing. I mean, at this stage, we're hearing the US now ramp up rhetoric around the protection of civilians. I mean, we're starting there at the moment. Is that likely to make any kind of a difference? We've obviously heard these calls from the US to Israel throughout this conflict. Is there a change on the horizon?
The war will end, but the issue is that is it going to end after another 10 or 20, you know, so we're at 30, 40,000 deaths. I mean, this is surpassed in the last year of Russia's attack and invasion of Ukraine. You haven't had nearly as many children dying in 1 year, right? I think the ratio is 5 times more in 1 month. So, you know, eventually, yeah, they'll move the dial to have a ceasefire, but what will it take? And I think, you know, and then we are at October 7 again, or October 6, and I think we need really creative solutions to move us forward.
You mentioned the occupied West Bank. Obviously, what we're talking about in terms of the tensions here, you alluded to that, they're well preceded this war. But do you think that the settler violence that we've been seeing, particularly in the occupied West Bank, has that now taken on a new dimension? It certainly feels like it has.
I don't know if it's taken a new dimension. I think it was escalating before October 7, and we had over 200 deaths in this last year. I mean, the settlers have grown since Oslo from 150,000 settlers to now 750,000 settlers, and they've become extremely racist and fascist and armed. And we talk about the horrific Hamas attacks, but we never talk about the horrific settler attacks. We talk about them as settler attacks. We never add all these, you know, 10 adjectives to these settler attacks to describe them. When we saw what happened yesterday, they attack, I mean, and they've been attacking and burning cars and burning shops for the last 2 years. It's disheartening, and it is. All you need to do is show your viewers a map of a shrinking West Bank, right? And that shrinking West Bank is a form of slow genocide.
Sami Hermes, an associate professor of anthropology at Northwestern University. Thank you for joining me here in the studio.